All right.
I don't know if
Sweet.
anyone's going to judge me because my room is so messy, but
That's, people's perception of mess is so interesting because I would not have guessed that you would think that your room was a mess.
um,
I'm seeing like
I
one
actually,
window of it.
I saw that you did a video thing on Zoom, and I was like, oh, I should tidy it up a little bit.
Is it like the horizontal spaces that bother you, or like does stuff pile up on the floor? Like what's your definition of mess?
I think it's just there's so much going on the shelf.
I see. I see. Yeah, but
Yeah.
see, I don't know what's normal for you. So, I mean, that could be like a really awesome altar you have going on there with all these little bottles.
Yeah, the supplement altar.
Hey, I don't judge. Whatever you worship is.
The gods of science.
So it's been what, like it was 2018, I think, or 2017 we last saw each other.
Yeah,
Maybe?
2017.
So it was like 3 years since I saw you. I imagine quite a bit has happened in your life. Some of it I've heard about, probably
Yeah,
the more epic things. But
yeah.
yeah, I feel like there's a lot to catch up on. So what do you feel like talking about?
What do I feel like talking about? Well, I guess the things you're referring to was the brain surgery. Yeah, that happened. It was about 39 hours of procedures.
For which you
Yeah.
were completely gone for.
Say it again.
Like you were knocked out for that amount of time, or did you like come back and then go back in
I was
another?
knocked out for at least 35 hours of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So no evidence of disease. So I'm pretty much in the clear right now. So I'm happy about that.
Wow. What
Yeah.
is it like to, one, have like a diagnosis given to you like that, and then two, I mean, I suppose this is like a minor part, but where my brain goes is like, what's it like to lose 39 hours? I mean, to, wake up and it's 35 hours later, 39 hours later.
Well, it was broken up into about 4 different procedures. Um, the first one was 6 hours of them blocking blood vessels that was feeding the tumor in my head. And the second one was 14 hours of resecting about only half of it. Then the third one was an attempt to do the same thing to embolize more of the blood vessels. And then the fourth one was going into my skull and getting out the rest of the tumor. Yeah. What was the first question again?
Well, just to be given that kind of like to find that out, was it a complete surprise? Were there signs of it that you were aware of, and this was
It
like
was a
cancer or
complete
something?
surprise for me. It 100% a complete surprise. I still remember the day. It was, I believe it was November 2nd, 2017. So just a couple months after we recorded
Yeah.
uh, -8, and then
Yeah.
-8, and then we, well, I got to the doctor's office, and he was kind of like super closed off. He just didn't know how to go about saying it. And so he just went straight for it because that wasn't his specialty. He wasn't really expecting to find something that serious. And
What
he
did
was
you go
like,
in for? Like, why did?
I was having problems breathing from my left nostril.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's quite a jump.
Yeah. But occasionally I would be able to breathe through it.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, like, I don't know, and like just a buildup of mucus,
Some
like,
septum something. Yeah.
yeah, who knows? Like, and I have been following like these health protocols for years, whatever it is, veganism or alkaline diets, yoga, meditation. The last thing I was expecting was a tumor the size of 5 golf balls in my head.
5?
It was huge. So it took up the entire left sinus.
Oh,
It
okay.
was starting to expand my face. Um, it it's locally aggressive, so it eroded the bone underneath the eye, went around the eye, and then eroded the bone underneath the brain, and then went into the cranial cavity and connected to the the main artery in the brain, the ICA. And then he showed me the picture of what they found in the CT scan, and I freaked out. I
I can imagine.
like I jumped in my chair. I was like this, like I was spazzing out. I like shaking
Was
and
someone there with
then
you?
no,
No,
because
just by
nobody
yourself.
was expecting this. Everyone was like, usually I'm unless I'm hanging out with other yogis and stuff, I'm usually the healthiest person in my sphere.
Yeah.
And so they told me that he connected me with an ear, nose, and throat oncologist here at the University of Miami. And then that whole other adventure begins. It was like 60 hours of calling different hospitals and doctors the first week and trying to figure out what my next course of action was.
How much time between then and when you opted for the surgery?
About 3 months.
Oh, that's a lot of anxiety, I would imagine.
Yeah, I it was the first week. All of my meditation practices helped me to really center myself. And so, and I had the support of family and friends and my ex-girlfriend at the time. And it was, I felt cared for. I felt like, okay, no matter what happens, I'm probably not going to die. So that's okay.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't malignant. So that was good. Um, but it had the doctors weren't sure if they were going to be able to save my eye,
Right.
and they weren't sure if they would be able to get it all out, and they weren't sure if it would you know kind of create some sort of permanent damage in the brain or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, but wasn't the prognosis was never fatal, just maybe catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe catastrophic. Yeah.
And at the time, so you go in, you have no concept that there's anything going on like remotely related to what you're about to see. And so somebody basically shows you like, here, this is your body. And I mean, there must be some sort of like disconnect between, but that's not how I feel. Or I didn't think I felt that way. And here I am looking at this thing.
Yeah, it definitely made me rethink how much I really knew myself. Because I think especially in in the world we travel in, there's a lot of this idea of bringing the attention inward and embodiment and somatic awareness, and you think you're fine. It's a really slow growing tumor, so I think that's part of the reason why there wasn't ever at any point like, okay, there's something absolutely 100% wrong with me right now. I
Mm-hmm.
was having a little bit of paresthesia on my left cheek, which is this sort of tingling sensation. And that was it. It didn't notice anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
That's such a great parallel for like other things that go on in people's lives though, that something could creep in that slowly that you could not even, you would get used to it as it grew, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you see, like you said, the first week was really hard, and then you had another few weeks before you actually got surgery, and there was some sort of conclusion. So what did you do in that time period?
So there was two things. One, I was really committed to not going under the knife if possible. So I had a consultation with this holistic doctor. Forget her first name, Dr. Jensen. She's consulted Tony Robbins and some other
Okay.
people, and she prescribed this alkaline diet, um, kind of with the hopes of at least reducing the tumor size.
Uh-huh.
And I did that strictly for 3 months. And I also, along with that, did a Rick Simpson oil treatment. And so it's pretty much like a very concentrated THC, um, cannabinoid oil. And people have found a lot of success with it with other cancerous tumors.
Uh-huh.
So I decided, okay, well, that would definitely be better than what they were offering me. The first couple of doctors I saw, it was it was borderline unacceptable what they were offering. The first doctor wanted to deglove my face and to,
I don't know what that means.
oh yeah, yeah. Basically, the incision would be straight down the midline.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Oh my God. Wow.
yeah. And then the second doctor had a better approach, but it was just incomplete. They would leave a piece of the tumor next to my eye,
Mm-hmm.
and um, they would still have to like enter through the cheek and like basically remove a piece of the bone and then put it back in, and just none of it felt right. Plus a full craniotomy, and it was just like, I'm not into it, not into
Yeah.
it. It scared the living daylights out of me, and it was like, okay, well, that's the best option I have right now. And they're saying that I could go a couple more months without doing the surgery, and the worst of it was already there.
Mm-hmm.
All that could happen was that the surgery would take longer.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try
I
this.
guess that was somewhat reassuring, right? I mean,
Yeah, it can't get any worse. Because it was already connected to the internal carotid artery, which is this artery that runs down the midline of the brain at the bottom. And for the longest time, surgeons weren't able to access that region.
uh,
It's only in the last 10, 20 years that they've been able to successfully go in there. So if somebody had a tumor there, it would just stay there basically.
wow.
Um, so the other thing was that the insurance I had, the medical insurance that I had at that time, wouldn't allow me to go see this more preferable doctor at the University of Miami.
Oh, wow.
First doctor I saw was at a local hospital,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't an academic institute. They really didn't have the specialty training for a case that complex.
Right.
So I switched to this better insurance that enacted at the beginning of 2018, and then I was still doing the protocol and still doing some research, calling different hospitals. I eventually found one team in Pittsburgh that had the best option, and that's who I went for the second surgery. the first surgery I did here at University of Miami, I ended up finding a better ENT oncologist, and they were able to remove half of it just through my nostrils.
Wow.
Yeah, great news. and then I found out there was still half of it left, and my insurance was running up.
Was that a
Um,
surprise after that surgery again? Like, did they expect to be able to take all of it out? And then they said, oh, oops, we
the
didn't?
wording he gave me was confusing.
Okay.
He said that we got about 95% of it out, and he wasn't clear that it was in the sinus that he said that,
Oh,
in
okay.
reference to the sinus.
Oh.
So we were like, oh, great, we don't have anything to worry about after this. I followed up with the neurosurgeon. He showed me the scan. I was like, okay, great. um, yeah, and then at that time, my ex-girlfriend, her brother had passed away 3 weeks before my first surgery. And then a week after the second surgery, her sister-in-law, her brother's wife, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So it was just this huge bombardment of facing
Death.
death, mortality. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So you got part of it removed in Miami. And then so were you forced to do more research then to find this other person in Pittsburgh?
I had already known that I already knew about the doctors. I had spoken to them already.
Mm-hmm.
What ended up happening, why I didn't go to them for the first surgery, was I ended up in the ER. I ended up in the ER about the first week of February that year, and it was because I had a migraine.
Hmm.
And it was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. It
Hmm.
was 10 out of 10. Within a matter of minutes, like my eyesight was just gray, metallic looking, and I couldn't walk. My sense of balance totally disrupted, and I went to the ER. I was like, sure, something had popped, something had broken. I was like, oh wow. And that was the first moment I it really dawned on me, like, okay, you could die from this. You need to get this done
Okay.
as soon as possible. And
So at that point, was that sort of the turning point with like, okay, I'm not gonna go the diet route? Like the
yeah, the holistic treatments didn't
yeah.
work. The
Okay.
tumor grew, and I opted for surgery with a man named Dr. Sargi here in Miami. Best guy ever. Love him. He's he's a character. Super entertaining and great bedside manners and great human. Um, so yeah, he visited me in the ER. He said, "Hey, we could attempt this just through your nostrils and see where it goes from there." Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that about him being such a great person. My mom went through breast cancer a few years ago, and she met the most amazing community of people through it. It was like she met her tribe. She'd been looking for friends for years in that place. I'm sure I know that's not the case with you, but it's amazing how these experiences can, I don't know, we can meet people maybe that we wouldn't have otherwise. And yeah.
Yeah, I connected with a lot of people that left a deep impression on my life through that experience. It's definitely a bonding moment in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So you went to Pittsburgh that afterwards, and that was the completion of the surgeries?
Yeah, so I visited the neurosurgeon in Miami. He said, "Hey, you still have this going on, this rather large nugget of tumor
Huh.
uh, pushing up against your brain, and you're gonna have to get it taken out. It's gonna keep growing."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Okay." And I the reason I went up to Pittsburgh was because the neurosurgeon in Miami still wanted to do a full craniotomy. So, like, for the people who don't know what a craniotomy is, it's basically they drill a piece of your skull off and access your
Right.
your brain. Yeah. And he still would have had to leave a piece of the tumor next to the eye. And he was expecting a bunch of other negative side effects like brain bleeding, and um, he was also expecting to have to permanently close off one of the arteries to the brain. So, like, my left jugular, basically. And then I contacted the guys in Pittsburgh, and they said, "Well, we can go through your eye and you don't have any of those other issues, and we'll also be able to take the whole thing out." And so I opted for that.
And your eyesight is
My eyesight is
functioning?
pretty good. As far as actual function,
Uh-huh.
so when I say go through the eye, it's this procedure called a lateral orbitotomy. So they saw the bone off the side of the eye, and then they go in through that hole that they make, and then they attach it, obviously. And as far as the function,
I'm
say it
doing
again.
amazingly well with your descriptions here. I'm not usually good. I'm not usually good with medical descriptions, but I feel very interested in what you're talking about. So I'm glad
I
to
hope it
hear
doesn't
that.
gross some people out. I know it's
No,
really intense for some people to hear.
no, I think that the way that you deliver it is really making a difference for me. So continue. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. So they
So they went in
they
through that hole.
yeah, so they make an incision here, and then they saw that piece of the bone out. They retract the eye, they just move it off to the side slightly while it's still inside the cavity, and then they start resecting, and they make their way up into the brain and start resecting from there. And they're also having to access the different parts of the the brain. So they actually they did this thing where they went through the nose and kept digging through the nose and kept going and going until they reached the bottom of the brain from there, and they resected the tumor from the artery that it was connected to, and then they were able to start taking it out from the hole that they made. And yeah, I mean, people look at me today and they can't even guess that that happened. It's like this really small, ever disappearing scar next to the side of my eye, and it's like,
Wow.
great.
Well, and that probably has to do with how well you care for your body to the healing process.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I have some double vision post surgery when I look off to the sides. Um, I have to flush my nose out every day because my sinus doesn't work as well, and that's pretty much the extent of the issues afterwards.
So can you breathe through both nostrils?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 Man, what an adventure. what does it feel like? I mean, because I know like many of us can, imagine what it might feel like to break our wrist or like, shatter our knee or something, because like those are sensations I feel like, but like, what does it feel like after, I imagine you're on a ton of drugs, but what does it feel like after your brain is gone into like that?
It was different both times. The first time, since they removed the piece of the tumor that was pushing up against like the eustachian tube, that's a tube that connects from the ear into the sinus, it really affected my balance a lot. So the first 2 weeks after the first surgery, I would be walking and out of nowhere, my body would just swivel 30, 90 degrees and I had no control over it.
Huh.
And it was interesting, just completely involuntary. Just I'd be walking and
Did you realize it was happening, or was somebody like, "Hey, Daniel, you're veering off"?
I realized it because I would be seeing myself
See
doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the second time around was way more intense. The drugs they had me on after the second surgery were extremely powerful. They had me on this anti-seizure medication called Keppra.
Uh-huh.
And it was causing me to slip into these dreamlike states. Like as soon as I closed my eyes, I would go immediately into a dream. It was
kind of like a hallucination a little bit, or?
It's really hard to, it wasn't a hallucination, because hallucination is like you have your eyes open and you're seeing these characters and this setting play out before you. I would close my eyes and go straight into a dream. I slept 16 to 20 hours a day for about a week after the second surgery.
Yeah, well, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and like I'd be having a conversation with someone and then like I'd be like, oh, I'm tired. I really need to stop talking right now. And I'd close my eyes and go right into a dream.
Was it a waking dream? What do they call that? Like, were you aware that you were dreaming as you were dreaming?
Lucid dreaming.
Lucid, yeah.
One of them, I distinctly remember being pretty lucid. It's like I closed my eyes and I stepped into this park in Canada, and actually Butchin was in the dream.
Hey, Butchin.
Butchin was in the dream, and there was a hotel, and I went into the hotel, and that was kind of the end of the dream, or at least what I remember of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that happened quite a bit. One time I closed my eyes and I felt my aura spinning around me faster than I've ever felt anything spin around me. I closed my eyes. I felt like I was in a, like, it was almost as if I was the center of a washing machine and the drum was just circling around me.
Oh, wow. Did you have nausea because of these sort of like imbalance issues, or?
The first one, I had a lot of nausea.
Yeah.
They had me on nausea medication for about a month. Yeah.
My gosh. So moving out of this experience, where are you now? Or like, what was the transition into what you're doing now?
Well, life went somewhat back to normal after that. Kept teaching yoga after maybe 6 months after that. Started teaching yoga again, started doing events, took a couple gigs here and there. And as far as the day-to-day things, that's, my life went more or less back to normal.
Yeah.
I feel extremely grateful that I had family supporting me and friends, loved ones. It was something that really shook me at my core in a lot of different ways. Just it made me confront my own sort of naivete, in a sense. Just the way that I approached it was, that was not the time for a holistic treatment. It was really trust. The trust I've had in the holistic or spiritual world was definitely shooken a lot. I felt a little betrayed in that sense. You have a lot of people spouting anecdotal evidence for things that they've never encountered, never seen, never dealt with. Yeah. And they speak it with the conviction of someone who's actually healed other people from whatever thing they're trying to sell you. And so that was good. The whole process got me grounded in a way that I've never been in my life. Mm-hmm. And it also let me know that I was extremely loved. I started a GoFundMe to help pay for all the medical bills, and I was just floored that people cared about me. And it let me know that I want to live. I think up to that point, I had taken a lot of pieces of my life for granted. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to me in that sense. Just made things really clear for me.
Wow.
In a good way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I bow to you. I have never had to make the kinds of choices that you have had to make, and my wow. I'm amazed. I mean, I was amazed from afar because I was reading your posts, but to hear you talk about the whole process, I mean, yeah. And how beautiful that it reaffirmed your, your love of life. And it sounds like you didn't, it's not like you're saying that you don't want to do anything spiritual or holistic ever again, because obviously you went back to teaching yoga and you're still, doing all these things, but like knowing where the place that has, and then where, more standard medical practices, what place they have too.
Yeah, but I think in a more in a sort of eagle's eye view, what I realized was that my philosophy of life was incomplete. That in the face of these emergencies, the simple one-liners don't work anymore. The prescribed prayers don't work anymore. The prescribed mantras don't work anymore. The idea that things can be taken care of if you just have blind faith in something, it just doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And it forced me to have a critical eye on what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was doing, and also what was going on around me, since my then girlfriend had her own set of tragedies to deal with, and how we deal with tragedy. And it was this ripple effect of how do we approach life in ever increasing complexity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a. I still meditate every day. I still pray every day. I'm I'm sure I have my own set of unscientific beliefs, and as we all do, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's, for me, the process has been more of a truth-seeking process, not like a let's burn the whole thing down process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are confronting that right now in so many ways.
Yeah, it's pretty intense out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, when you're talking about the 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 different approaches that even the medical community had towards treating to like removing the tumor, like it seems like there was so much. I mean, it was almost like I don't know, artistic license with with how we're going to do this. That wasn't like it wasn't even straightforward from a medical perspective, right?
Yeah, especially not in the subspecialties that was dealing with my tumor. It's very, I even asked the surgeons about this. I was like, why isn't there like a standard set of practice for this?
Right.
I'm getting 4 different approaches for something. And part of it's because it was such a rare disease. It's like 1 out of every 250,000 head and neck tumor diagnosis is that, like, one of the diagnoses.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and yeah, with something like breast cancer, there's a millions upon millions of people get it. So
Right.
they've been able to see what works best over time and what generally is the best medicine to prescribe for a certain type of cancer and things like that. And with this, it was just, we've only dealt with it so many times.
Right.
And the other surgeon I asked, he said, there's many ways to skin a cat. And I was like, all right, I'm down. That was Dr. Gardner up in Pittsburgh. He said
yeah.
that. I found that really funny.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, when I was a child, I sort of assumed that things were a lot more straightforward than I now understand they are as an adult. I mean, just you think about like, never would have occurred to me that there would be so many different ways to offer this procedure, or so many procedures that they could offer for this particular diagnosis. But then also like how dependent you would be on the mood of the doctor, like what had happened to him, what had happened to him or her on that day, or you know the things that they're aware of, that you are, like, say when you play percussion, you're going to be so much more aware of, and you were actually when we recorded, like, oh, I didn't like that, that part that I did, and I was like, well, I didn't even hear it, but I trust you, let's record it again.
Yeah.
That there's so much more to things than we realize from the outside, and then when you're involved in it, you realize how complex it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance. The doctors are also specializing in certain techniques, so they only offer what they know how to do.
Right.
Yeah, that's another thing that I realized afterwards. I mean, I thought that the fact that first man even offered me that procedure was barbaric.
Right.
That should not even be on the table.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow.
So how's music going for you during the pandemic times?
Um, it's good. I'd always been more of a recording artist anyway, so I am kind of missing playing live. But I missed, or I moved from Phoenix. So I'm in Washington now, and I don't have a band here anyway. So I guess what's shifted for me is that I didn't really have the opportunity to meet anyone before everything shut down.
Right.
But I will. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Been recording, been working on new songs. I'm delving into some English language stuff. I'm being inspired to write songs again, which is fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, well, I've mostly worked live, and so that completely cut that out. And then
Yeah.
any of the events that I had going on are completely done for now. So it's been tough. It's been
Yeah.
tough.
Is Miami is leaning towards cautious, right? Because I know a lot of the states are sort of playing it differently.
Well, they've been rather reckless, and
Okay.
so now I don't know what the numbers are today, but yesterday was 15,000 reported cases in Florida,
Okay.
almost 4,000 of them in Miami. So it's pretty intense here right now. Things are probably going to go back into shutdown within a week.
Okay. So you were shut down and then it reopened and now it's
It,
going to
it that
open
like stage
completely.
3 reopening, that doesn't really mean much. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, at least for artists,
Right.
it's like still like a cap of 50 people at gatherings, and
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not.
Yeah. The yoga, the only thing I know about that for Washington is the yoga studio that I joined right before everything closed down um, can have 5 people per class right now. So
Wow.
probably has to do with the room size, but yeah,
Right.
that's not much of a concert to do it there. Intimate song circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, it's so small that it would probably feel a little awkward.
Especially if like you had a 5-piece band. Yeah. And then you were like, well, that's it. That's all we can do. We'll live stream
Just a concert for yourselves.
it. I mean, I would go for that at this point. I think that would be at least fun to gather with fellow musicians again. But it'll happen.
Yeah.
You were traveling, I think, when you came through Phoenix from
Yeah.
yeah. And so had
From
you been
Solstice.
touring a lot in the interim, or were you mostly playing in Miami?
Mostly playing in Miami. I did a, a short stint with Jai Jot in at the end of 2018.
Uh-huh.
Um, Played at Satnam Fest once or twice. Another festival or two, I can't really remember. There's enough gigs in Miami when it's open that I'll be busy a couple nights a week.
Wow, yeah, that's cool.
I'm not the biggest fan of touring.
Me neither.
It's so intense, and at least the times I've toured, it seems like it just seems to bring out everyone's like fight or flight mode more than usual.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting because you're kind of like, if you're a band leader, and I've seen this in other tours too, and you're calling people up, and you've never had a group that's spent 2, 3, 4, let alone 6 months on the road together.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, like a new
And then
group.
all of a sudden you're forced into a van for 10 hours at a time.
Uh-huh.
It's, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like my marriage.
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, that's an intense process for sure. I was talking with Ajit a few weeks ago, and she just loves touring. I feel like I think she has like a very similar group that all know each other and they all know their role, and it's
Yeah.
that sort of thing. It's like a roving family, I think, as opposed to like a hodgepodge of excellent musicians. That I mean, not
Yeah.
that her musicians aren't excellent, but you know what I mean. Like I don't think they're selected just because of their musicality, and then like I hope we all get along, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. She's not vetting for like the elite top musicians that
Yeah,
she can find. She's really looking for the soul.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, they have a great thing going on. Always admire seeing them play.
yeah, yeah. I think that's necessary for sanity, maybe not for concert. I mean, I know like the Eagles, for example, just can't stand each other, right? Isn't that the story? And they get together and they play awesome music, and then they're like, only for another $1 million.
I've heard that story so many times in four different bands. I've heard of bands hiring a band psychologist just to deal with it. That's a real thing. It's the if you're playing the same exact songs for 30 years
Yeah.
and you're just a jukebox for tens of millions of people.
Well, that's the thing too. Yeah. We don't have that so much in like the conscious music scene. I feel like where people are like, oh my god, I'm only going to come if you play your number one hit, and otherwise like I don't care about the rest of your catalog, sort of thing. I feel like that's not because nobody has like number one charting hits maybe, but but yeah, I mean, I feel like the audiences that fellow chant artists get, or conscious musicians or whatever, they're a little bit more forgiving, because I've always felt like they come with the intention of having a great experience. Like they're not there to sort of go, well, let's see how well they.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also more empathetic and sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
and they can tell if usually they can tell if the people are really centered in the vibration the artist is trying to
Mm-hmm.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll make more of a difference, I think, in the takeaway that they get from it. Was like, that was really good means like they were really tapped in.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like, oh my god, that drummer just like shredded.
Totally. Yeah. So when you play out, are you playing for a lot of different kinds of music, like within the music scene in Miami, or?
I would say half of it's kind of in the yoga, conscious dance
Mm-hmm.
sort of world, and the other half of it is in the entertainment
Mm-hmm.
industry. Just here's a party, there's a DJ, go
Right.
go make their nights, you know.
That's cool.
And yeah, I would say it's really fun to see people living it up and getting totally hammered, and it's funny because I'm sober and I'll go to these parties and I'm playing, and sometimes they'll offer me a drink, and it's like, oh, thank you, but
Yeah.
maybe you should give your date that drink.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. It's interesting being sober among people who are drinking. I've always found that to be an interesting experience, but less so if like I don't know, if I'm not going at it from sort of a judgmental like angle, and I do sometimes drink, so I don't want to put it like
Yeah, I drink like 1 to 3 times a year. That's like, and it's great, but I say sober more in the sense like, okay, like 90% of the time
Yeah.
I'll be sober,
Uh-huh.
just despite where I'm at. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your epic journey, and your what has happened since. Is there anything else that you want to report before we
Oh my gosh, there's so much I'm
leave?
curious about you.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, when I saw you change your name on Facebook, I just had the most admiration for you.
Oh, thank you.
And I was wondering what sort of caused that shift out of the Sikh Dharma. And
Yeah, for the past, I think it's been like 3 years, I'd had this question because I'd been listening to Abraham. You're familiar with Abraham?
Abraham
And
Hicks.
yeah, I think I may have talked to you about that when we were recording. But um, my question was like, okay, I understand, I sort of get what they're saying, and then I'm involved in this community where I'm having to do so many things that are based on rules, and I'm making so many choices based on what somebody else is basically telling me what to do that I've never, even met. And like the dissonance between those two things, because on the one hand they were saying like, you know, love is acceptance. Love is, acting on your inspiration. I was like, well, I can't act on this one because I want to do something that I'm not supposed to do, So like I'm constantly censoring myself. So I had this kind of question going on, and I kind of reached like what I felt to be rock bottom in my sense of limitation, like in just how limited I felt by the choices that I made. And it was causing me to be really depressed. And it was so silly, but at the time it had to do with, I really wanted to eat fish. And I was like, no, you can't. You're not allowed to. You vowed not to. And I really felt like it was plaguing my mental health. And so I kept asking myself, I was like, is it really worth, saying no to this so many times that I'm kind of going crazy inside myself. Like it was almost like trying to like block a dam or something, like something wanted to come out. And I don't think it had anything to do with eating fish. I don't think that was like the magical cure all, but it was just like doing something that I wasn't supposed to do and realizing that it wasn't such a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I didn't do it very often, but I was like, anyway, it led me to meeting this guy, Gary Bodley, who was also a channel. He channels this group of beings called Joshua. And I ended up joining his boot camp that he does. And I ended up coaching for his boot camp. And through this, I've just had such a shift in perspective of what's right for me, like what I can really feel solid about, the choices that I can really feel solid in, and how not serious everything needs to be, like you don't, I'm sort of coming back around and going like, okay, like having a discipline is a really nice thing, but I had to also go through this, like, you know what, I'm just gonna, anything I feel like doing, I'm just going to do. I kind of went through that process for, I don't know, about a year. But anyway, it ended up leading me away from my marriage. And I found myself in a new relationship here in Washington. And to get to my name, I'm getting there. I had wanted to go back to my original name because I was feeling like using this spiritual name that I did connect with at one point was just less and less authentic. Like it was like this mask that I wore. And I noticed how it had really not allowed me to connect with people like throughout the years. And anyway, so I just was like, I really want to change my name back, but it feels so scary because I have
Yeah.
this whole like I couldn't wrap my head around it. So then when like the Yogi Bhajan shit dropped, I I was like, all right, this is the moment. you know.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing that I need to hold on to about that name or, anything. And then my question of like, how can this be true and also this be true was like, well, this wasn't true, so this is true. You you can follow your inspiration, and you can live authentically and also make choices that were different than you thought you needed to make previously. So very long-winded answer to your question, but that's kind of how I found myself here.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently cut my hair about 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So now
I was wondering like, because you look different, and I couldn't put my finger on it.
it's the haircut, it's the shave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks good.
Thanks. Yeah.
I've seen like a bunch of people cut their hair and post pictures on Facebook recently, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy for everyone. It's I think especially with the idea of the bana and the hair, it's like it's really an anchor into, if you feel the organization is corrupt, like I do at least,
Mm-hmm.
it really feels like an anchor into something that does not really serve your being.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all these other fears like, oh, with the hair, it's like the antenna for your intuition and all this stuff. And Buddhist monks are bald. They're probably some of the most intuitive people on the planet.
Sure.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, that was really empowering for me. Is like I kept making these choices, and I was like, no, I can still meditate. Nope, I still feel spiritual.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I started eating meat again about 2 years ago, and the sort of dissonance that the rigidity creates.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm a yogi. I can't eat meat. I can't not meditate for one day. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then just like, why can't I just be a human being who does certain things that really make sense to me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, when I saw you change your name, I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really happy. And you looked happy, and all of the life decisions you were making just seemed so empowering, and obviously they are. And so yeah, just saying I'm happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy for you too. I like your haircut.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, and I feel too like if you chose to grow your hair at some other point in your life for your own reasons, then it wouldn't feel like the same as growing your hair for the reason that you were before, or like that I was before.
Yeah. Well, I grew my hair out twice before I grew it out for the sake of Kundalini yoga. Just kind of had this like rocker rebellious phase in high school and in middle school, and I would grow it out for like 3 years and shave it all off and do it all over again. And but
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny thinking about how much shame could be attached to cutting your hair. Like that's really difficult for my partner to understand. He's never been part of, any sort of organization like that. He's like, the haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bonkers.
You just don't know. Yeah. Cool. Well, how can people keep in touch with you or find out what you're doing musically, stuff like that?
Well, there's a website in the works, but for right now, social media.
Okay. I shall link your Facebook.
Yeah, link my Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks for spending the time with me today.
Yeah,
Super
thank
fun
you
to catch
for
up.
having me.
Yeah.
It's a treat.
Sweet. All right. Well, let me know if you need anything in the future. Yeah.
Definitely, likewise.
Yeah.
I'm actually setting up a studio here now.
Ooh. Are you
Yeah,
recording your music, other people's music, both?
both, both.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool. Sure. Yeah, maybe we can collaborate.
that'd be super fun.
Yeah. All right, sweet. Okay, well, have a great rest of your evening here in Miami.
Evening.
Yeah, okay. All right. Bye.
Take care, Porter. Bye.
Bye.